I wrote this down so that way I don't have to say it off the top of my head. This is promotion versus pollution. Since my search for various vacation destinations on social media began, I've seen a tremendous influx of interest in Puerto Rico in the last 4 years. Being Puerto Rican myself, I decided to explore the why for the rise in interest all of a sudden. TikTok promotes Puerto Rico as a place to go if you're looking for a cheap vacation destination. And I begin to wonder, how could this island be called cheap? Since I was little, I always remember the island being super expensive, especially for my family members, super luxurious. I started to kind of backtrack and think there's very much a separation from what tourists believe versus what civilians experience. I've completed research for multiple years on this question. Why is Puerto Rico cheap to tourists but expensive for civilians, especially for my family? These videos on social media promoting Puerto Rico, do they contribute to the economic displacement between tourists and civilians? Why is it that civilians have been and continue to be impoverished while government officials and tourists, even those that go to the island seeking real estate investment opportunities, cause Puerto Rico to continue corruption over its civilians? Do these social media posts promote or pollute Puerto Rico? The following is an interview with myself and my sister about this topic. Okay, so when I say Puerto Rico, what comes to your mind? Go. All right, what do you have written down?
I wrote 8 things. I said beaches, beautiful, home, food, Luma, Bad Bunny, family, and fun.
Explain Luma.
Luma is the electric company of Puerto Rico, who is notorious for cutting out the light to the island because the electricity grid is so old. They're charging people quite a bit of money. Puerto Ricans have one of the highest electricity bills as any citizen of the United States. Puerto Rico is part of the United States. It's not a state, but it's a territory. So yeah, that's what I think of is Luma and their corruption.
Now take out your phone, go on TikTok. Just search up Puerto Rico. What are the first posts that come up?
Getting married.
Get married at El Morro.
Get married at spots in Old San Juan to snap a selfie. 5 days in Puerto Rico itinerary.
I went to Puerto Rico for 7 days, and this is how much I spent.
How much I spent as a college student for 7 days.
Okay, do you see any trend?
Travel. Lots of travel.
Specifically for who?
College students, people who are in a rush to go on vacation, short.
Is there anything there that explains anything that has to do with Luma? In the first 10 posts.
No.
Anything that has to do with the governmental corruption that's very adamant in Puerto Rico. Anything that has to do with the actual Puerto Ricans themselves. Anything that has to do with anything that doesn't have to do with traveling for vacation, for a getaway, for a paradise getaway.
No, I see traveling vacation. I do see one.
There's an 80% chance that it's already raining.
Using the meme from Mean Girls. I think it's actually a joke in that, like, you know, people always come there for tourism, and this is actually like what it's like. So it's kind of poking fun at it. But I mean, that's one of literally dozens of posts that are about traveling. How much I spent in 5 days.
So basically the whole thing, you can stop screen recording now. The whole reason why I'm doing this research is basically to see how social media very much contributes to the promotion of Puerto Rico as propaganda for cheap island getaway versus people that actually live there, especially considering the fact that it's part of the United States.
And the problems that are.
Social media is basically contributing to this
glamorization.
It's basically contributing to the displacement that is at hand in terms of separation between tourists and civilians. Like when you go there, you'll probably have your little Airbnb that costs you not that much, but nobody realizes that just next door to all these nice Airbnbs, there's somebody that their fridge doesn't work because Luma cut their electricity.
because they can't afford it.
Or the water goes out. That's another.
And these are people that have lived here for years, generations, and it's like the island doesn't do anything for them.
Right.
And people going into Puerto Rico to gentrify the hell out of it, profit off of Puerto Rico, not even live there, own land there, get tax breaks there.
I think I saw the polarizing difference between like citizens and like people who are moving to Puerto Rico. Like as I grew older, like being from Puerto Rico but never having lived there and seeing like the different opportunities that I've been like gifted here, I saw the big change after Maria. We had people coming in to fix and do humanitarian help, and it turned into, wow, this is a really beautiful place that I can make money off of. And then like with the popularization of like Latin music, people like Bad Bunny, Maluma, you know,
That's when Puerto Rico started to
from
gain a
Puerto
little bit
Rico
of
started to gain more
attention.
popularity, more people wanted to go visit, and like they basically turned Puerto Rico into like an even bigger like tourist stop, and like the
Seen as more of a
government
business opportunity to people rather than a
Yeah.
place where people actually
the government really played
Would.
into that and fixed touristy areas. And then when you had to, for example, my mom's hometown of Caguas, there's so many abandoned houses, stray dogs everywhere, garbage everywhere, the light is cut off,
But those
the
aren't things
water.
that people are necessarily
But
see
no,
when
of
they go on
course,
vacation.
of course, tourists don't see that as they,
Mhm.
enter the island, because that's like the stuff that nobody talks about, and that's this big division. We have people like Logan Paul who can sit here and say on a podcast that he loves Puerto Rico because there's no potholes in his street, and I can literally think of like
Every single pothole.
every
that we've
single
ever hit.
pothole that we've ever
Puerto
hit in
Rico.
my entire life in my mom's hometown. On top of the fact that sometimes there's just a random cow like standing in the street. Like it's not. How is it that it's
It's not
such a
as picture
small-
perfect as people
and
think.
it's such a small island and people are having such different experiences there, and it's about like access to resources.
That's what leads
and
to the
how-
displacement. There's literally
Yeah.
like people living in these mountains on the hillside where it's nice and bright and sunny, and then just on the other side of the mountain is landslides and
Yeah.
stuff that are destroying people's houses because of all the construction that people are doing, and that contributes to the pollution of the water. It contributes to
It's
literally
tourists
just-
coming and depleting the already limited resources to make a quick buck.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be more done about that in order to see the real change that we want to see. A lot of American politics affects politics from the island, and we can't have great candidates that represent us on the island if the people here are not doing their part. But because there's such a disconnect between like islanders and like diasporicans, so like Puerto Ricans born in the diaspora over here, there's got to be some type of unification. Like even if we don't live there, like that's still our home, that's still a place that we want to go visit, it's still a place that we love. Like we should be voting for laws that like make it easier, or I should say like make it harder for politicians to just like capitalize off of like Puerto Rico, and like it should make it shameful
make
that
laws
the fact
in
that
favor of the
of the
civilians. rather than-
civilians.
It's an article from Penn State, and starts off with, it's basically about the protests against the corrupt governor Ricardo Rosselló in 2019, and how Puerto Ricans basically took to social media to get him to resign. When the people of Puerto Rico took to the streets after a series of government corruption scandals this past July, a group of researchers took the opportunity to determine the role of social media in the organization and dissemination of the protests, marches, and other activities that occurred. And then a little bit later, the same article says, the researchers found that the hashtag Ricky Renuncia was used approximately 1 million times in the period of analysis, while the hashtag Ricky Se Queda barely reached 6,000 tweets. Basically meaning that the people that wanted the governor to stay, the corrupt governor to stay, reached like about 6,000 tweets. But everybody else, it just goes to show that there's power in social media, and that through social media, change can happen. All these social media posts that are promoting Puerto Rico as this island getaway rather than as an actual place where people live, I'm starting to see a pattern of it hurting Puerto Rico, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think it's talking about like the power, right? That we talk about lifting up voices and whose voices we're like listening to, right? And when we think of Puerto Rico, it's important to like listen to Puerto Rico voices. And I'm not Puerto Rican voices, and I'm not talking about like Logan Paul, like that
The
lives
problem
there.
is,
Like
yeah,
he
the
does not
algorithms
speak.
that
He doesn't
social
speak
media
for
do.
Puerto Rico, but he's like the most outward voice because he has a platform. He has a cross-platform that reaches the island and the states, and like it's really hard to get people who don't know or don't resonate with like things that happen on the island to like care. I think we talk about Bianca. I forget her last name. But
Bianca Graulo.
Yeah, she's
That's
an
another source that I have.
independent reporter, and she does a lot for Puerto Rico. She has a really great documentary that's attached to the Bad Bunny music video for El Apagón, which is essentially a protest song about the electric grid and the electricity problems in Puerto Rico. And she's, to me, one of the most important and influential voices in all Puerto Rico. And I can guarantee you that, like, her
Barely anybody
platform,
knows about her.
unless you're Puerto Rican, like
You
half
don't really know about her.
of the people that I meet day to day, even Latinos, they don't know who she is.
It's part of the algorithm. TikTok puts out there anything that people want to see, anything
Right.
that's trending, anything
Right.
that people start to look up based off of the history of their Google searches, the history of their phone searches. Literally anything that they have interest in is what is promoted to them through social media, and that's not always what should be seen by people. There are
Right.
certain social media is a tool. It's being used as a tool for monetary incentive rather than as a tool for education and broadening your knowledge of certain things, especially with Puerto Rico. I'm going to read another quote here from the same article. Researcher Alexis Santos, who said, social media is becoming more and more crucial in politics. Santos said, who added that by documenting this case, the researchers hope to provide clues that would help in the development of tools that can identify this type of apparent influencing behavior in the future. Basically talking about how 2019 social media was used literally to overthrow the government.
Yeah.
But about how social media can basically be used to benefit societies in the future, not just Puerto Rico as well, like other societies too. It seems like it's taken a reverse effect and it's kind of starting to pollute Puerto Rico rather than promote.
Injuring.
This quote is from dataportal.com. It says Puerto Rico was home to 2.3 million social media users in January 2024,
Okay.
equating to 70.8% of the total population. So there's a significant amount of people that are using social media in Puerto Rico, but it's almost as if the people that don't even live there and post about Puerto Rico, they're the ones that get
Their voices
first.
are.
Their
And
voices are heard over all the people that actually live in Puerto Rico.
I think that has a lot to do with how these softwares are kind of built with and the algorithms are built with bias. Rich white people tend to be the more outspoken voices. Why? Because of monetary purposes, and newsflash, but like a lot of the citizens of Puerto Rico are, barely getting paid minimum wage. So it makes sense why the algorithm would favor content about Puerto Rico from non-citizens.
There's another article posted by the New Yorker. It says Puerto Rico's bond debt had soared to $74 billion, almost a third of which was held by hedge funds. Meanwhile, the government was struggling to provide basic services to residents.
Bond debt, basically what bond debt is referring to is like the debt that we are in with the United States, like how much money that we borrowed, right, in bonds or whatever it is. I know that infamously, Puerto Rico is known for the amount of debt that they have, accrued
That has a
with the
lot to
United
do
States.
with
That has,
the Jones Act plays into that though too,
for
right?
sure.
For those of you that don't know, the Jones Act basically means that any imports that Puerto Rico can get, let's say from like neighboring Jamaica or like any
It has
parts
to
of
go
the
through
Caribbean,
the States.
it has to go through the states first or be directly from the states for it to then go to Puerto Rico. Basically, let's say a crate of apples is shipped from Kissimmee, Florida to Puerto Rico. That crate of apples costs like roughly what, $3,500. When shipping it from Jamaica to Puerto Rico would cost
Or
them,
DR.
yeah, or Dominican Republic, neighboring islands, would cost Puerto Ricans
Significantly less.
basically half. And that's just another way that the United States kind of keeps Puerto Rico under their control, keeps Puerto Rico in debt overall.
It's heavily protected by politicians. It's frequently brought up in the question of Puerto Rico and the United States and the relationship and how the Jones Act is literally swallowing this island, and politicians won't budge because they make so much money.
I'm gonna play a video by Bianca Graulao. It's called Why There Are Still So Many Outages in Puerto Rico.
Le pregunté a Nelson por qué él cree que Luma no hizo más para retener a empleados como él con décadas de experiencia en el sistema eléctrico de Puerto Rico.
No nos ven a nosotros como indios, es la verdad. Los jefes americanos que están ahí nos ven,
¿Usted quiere decir que los ven como inferiores?
sí, sí.
It's basically like all the big bosses in Puerto Rico will look at Puerto Ricans and literally see them as inferior. They are there just to make them money. They don't see them as anything else. They don't see them as the people that lived there before they even got there. And with that, that's why all these like social media posts are so detrimental to the actual Puerto Ricans on the island, because people will go there, they'll continue to fund all these people that own all their little Airbnbs. And it's like, that's literally what begins to hurt the civilians that are on the island.
Through my research, I've seen exactly how social media has served as a weapon when fighting against governmental power. And it's not just through my research. One of my uncles was actually at the protests back in 2019 when the Ricardo Rosselló protests were going on. Most people have seen Bad Bunny's music video for El Apagón, shaming the Puerto Rican government for not caring for its native civilians and catering to the white island investors. From pop culture icons shining light onto the problems in Puerto Rico, to trending hashtags that overthrow corrupt government officials within a week. Within a week, it's very much possible to promote Puerto Rico in ways other than investment opportunities and cheap vacation destinations. Cheap vacation destinations that have major impacts on less fortunate communities within the island. So why is this not happening? Why is it that when I search for Puerto Rican content on social media, I'm shown 2 itineraries, 3 what I spent compilations, and 0 social media posts when there's clearly civilian social media activity? It is as if social media platforms have lost all concern in conserving culture and have become invested solely in the profiting from user activity while causing civilians to disappear from the grid of For You pages. Through this island promotion, we end up with island pollution.